On the mend. The Bank of Japan pointed to signs of improvement in the world's third largest economy, and the news sent stocks soaring. With me down the line to discuss all is Nick Stamenkovic. Nick, we're seeing a massive catch-up rally by the mega banks this month, which is powering the Nikkei 225 to a 15-year high. Now the question may be, is the Nikkei unstoppable?
Well, certainly the BOJ seems to be a bit more upbeat about the Japanese economy than previously. In their latest assessment of the Japanese economy, they upgraded both industrial production and exports, although the Q4 GDP figures did surprise to the downside. Clearly, investors are encouraged by the recent set of earnings we've seen in Japan, which are seeing a steady improvement as the backdrop for shareholders improves, given the corporate changes we're seeing in Japan. On top of that, we've seen a little bit of weakness against the yen, against the dollar, which has helped on the margin. But overseas investors have been, cautious towards Japan for many periods. But it looks as though now finally we might start seeing adjustment there. Furthermore, the change we saw last year in terms of the pension situation, big pension fund in Japan, clearly shows a shift away from fixed income towards equities. So we might be starting to see some signs of a shift there as well. But overall, the Japanese Nikkei certainly seems to be catching up after the strong performance we've seen, particularly in the euro area equities for the last month or so.
Governor Kuroda said on Wednesday he saw no need now to expand monetary stimulus. It's unusual for him to immediately assert or deny any action to the media. But analysts now expect the Bank of Japan will wait to see how oil prices may impact people's deflationary mindset. What do you think, though? Has Japan's balance sheet been loosened enough?
Well, I mean, if you look at the economy itself, it seems to be in a gradual recovery path. But you look at inflation, seems to be on decline once again. The core rate is very close to zero, if not in negative territory. Much will depend on how the recent fall in oil prices, what impact it has on liquidity and gas prices in Japan. If we see a renewed decline, then we could see inflation falling back again, both the headline and particularly the core rate. Hence, the Bank of Japan might find itself in a bit of a precarious position in the summer when it does its next semi-annual outlook, and would have to adjust its balance sheet accordingly. I doubt they'll buy any more JGBs because the market is so distorted by the heavy exposure they have. But they could buy some more ETF equities, and that clearly would be a supporting factor for the Nikkei as well going forward.
So it does seem that the weak yen is finally boosting the nation's all-important export engine. At the same time, yields on US Treasuries came under pressure after the Fed revealed policymakers were in favour of holding rates for longer. With all that in mind, what is your outlook for the dollar-yen?
Well, the dollar-yen's been stuck in a very narrow trading range over the last 2-3 months, having fallen significantly when the BOJ introduced its QQE policy, expanding its balance sheet very significantly. For now, I don't really see that changing, but much will depend not just on the BOJ's actions, but on the Fed actions as well. As we saw from the last FOMC minutes for January, the Fed doesn't need to be in a hurry to raise interest rates. But next week's semi-annual testimony by the Fed Chair Yellen will be very important in dictating whether we're going to see an interest rate hike in mid this year or whether later this year. Clearly, if we see signs that the Fed is going to hold off until later this year, and indeed into 2016, then it's difficult to see much upside for the dollar. But if we see a deterioration in rate expectations, then the dollar ultimately could gain further against the yen. But for now, I think we're stuck in a relatively narrow trading range. Until we see a decisive shift in either Fed or BOJ policy, I don't expect that to change near term. But over the medium term, I do think the yen will weaken further against the dollar.
Nick, great to catch up with you as always. Thank you for sharing your insights today. Well, that's all from me for the moment, but for more on those FOMC minutes, click back for another exclusive interview with Louise Macaulay. For me and for now though, it's goodbye.